Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. The book I'm holding right now is a witty, poignant, and refreshingly candid exploration of love, loss, and life on the autism spectrum. It's written by Trout, and it's titled Up All Night, an Aspie's memoir of chasing girls in quicksand. Rich is sitting right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. I get to talk all about it. Rich, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
It's good to be here, and thank you for inviting me very much.
It's really great to be talking with you, and I'm curious about Up All Night, Rich. Can you tell me what readers are going to be getting into here?
Well, I'd say the simple way to put it is that the book has three parts. Part one is grade school, junior high. Part two is high school, college. Part three is my adult years. I wrote the book to inspire other people on the autism spectrum to realize they can achieve their dreams, because if I can do it, then anybody can. And the turning point for me was when I moved to Hobbs, New Mexico in 2001, and I had to start working as a reporter at that point, right after I got a master's in journalism. And every day I had to be talking to people on the phone, in person, by email. And I'd say within 2 or 3 months, I wasn't scared of strangers anymore. And I was starting to get good with socializing. And a year later, I became a part-time teacher. And so that allowed me to socialize in a different way, in front of a group of students. And so I kept on growing like crazy. And I became a much better reporter during that time. And I started winning a lot of awards. There was one year when I got first, second, and third place in the science category. And I helped our newspaper get Best in Show about 4 times. I did go into teaching in 2012. I did that full time. Then I left teaching, December 2023, and I went back to the paper for about a year. I decided to take time off to market the book and promote the book, and that's what I've been concentrating a lot on right now.
So how'd this all come about? What inspired you to start on this?
My main inspiration for writing the book is I wanted to, first of all, make people laugh. Humor has been a huge part of my life. And I think I was a freshman in college, like the very beginning of freshman year in college, when I realized humor can be a great tool. It engages people. They laugh, they relate to the main character. They want to get to know more about that person. And so I kept on trying to use humor throughout my early career and throughout my later career. I guess my second reason for writing the book is to inspire other people with Asperger's and autism. They need to realize that anything's possible. They can really achieve almost anything. And I wanted to relate to them so they can maybe get out of a funk that they might be in. And then third reason was to inspire more people to become Christians. The publisher is Kristian Klepes Publishing. I had this an event that was so incredible, so amazing, that I described it as my epiphany. That's a major chapter in the book. And part two, I wanted to share that with other people, and I believe there are a lot of other people who have experienced the same thing. And then there's also, I think, a lot of people who haven't experienced that yet, but they're searching for it. I wanted to give them inspiration to keep on going and keep on reading the Bible, going to church, and just, search for the answer. And it'll come. It finally does come.
So when it comes to writing and publishing especially, I know you're experienced in writing, obviously, but have you published books before, or are you kind of new to that?
As far as publishing books, I'm brand new to that. I've published a lot of other stuff, like in magazines, newspapers, magazine articles, like freelance magazine articles. So I've had experience publishing different things, just not a book until now.
So was this a long journey for you overall, the writing, publishing, and everything?
Yeah, it was very long in some ways. The act of writing, it's not easy. You have to be by yourself for most of the day. You're just hoping that people will connect with it. I really hope that a lot of people connect with Up All Night.
Again, it's titled Up All Night, an Aspie's memoir of chasing girls in quicksand. It's written by Trout, published by Kristian Klepes Publishing, and available everywhere pretty much. Places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Rich, it's been wonderful talking with you tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me all about Up All Night.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Open Windows is the name of the new young adult fiction novel written by Melissa W. Sorgi, and we're going to be talking all about it. Melissa is sitting right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me tonight.
It's a pleasure.
Melissa, what are readers going to be getting into whenever they get into Open Windows?
Well, it tells the story of how two teens develop a friendship. Now the relationship is tested by events. The two main characters meet in a high school in a small coastal town in Maine in an English class. And there are two narrators. One is Samantha or Sam, who's a loner who believes she can live with only her Great Dane, her books, and her music. George, who is from Miami, was sent to Maine as a punishment because his father caught him in a, unpleasant situation. So he had to get rid of him and wanted him as far away from him as he could. So he sent him to Maine. And George is immediately picked on at the school by the school bullies because of the color of his skin. It's not very colorful up in Maine. And he's Hispanic. And he's small because he's the son of a jockey. So he's immediately picked on by the bullies. And he and Sam sort of connect in English class by sharing jokes and notes passed back and forth, and discover they have a lot in common. George continues to be miserable in high school as he's bullied and picked on and misses Miami and his friends there. And Sam, who's never had a friend in her life since she was a very little girl, starts noticing this and feeling badly for him and wants to reach out and help him out. And so slowly they become friends, much to Sam's surprise. And George at one point is attacked by the bullies and beaten up so badly he's sent to the hospital. And at that point, without him being around her, Sam realizes how much she's come to need him, which she swore she'd never need a human being in her life. The rest of the story continues about their growing relationship and various weird events that happen to them that test their friendship.
So how'd this all come about, Melissa? What gave you the inspiration to write this?
Well, originally it was for a capstone project for my master's degree, but it developed out of, I work for the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, cataloging materials for the library. And I kept reading materials about how young LGBTQ plus kids were being thrown out of their houses and ended up homeless or trafficking because their parents could not stand to have someone like them in their house. And I felt terrible about that. And I wanted to reach out somehow and say, not everyone is like that. Your life doesn't have to end. There are people who care, people who want to help you, people who accept you exactly as you are. And it kind of grew from there.
Have you done this kind of thing before, written and published, or is this kind of new ground for you?
Well, I had a bunch of poems published in the last 2.5 months or so, but this is my first work of fiction.
Oh, so being your first one, was this a long endeavor for you, the writing and publishing, the whole thing?
Well, the publishing seems a little long, but the writing probably took me about a school year. Because like I said, I did it when I was getting my master's.
So once you had your manuscript and you started working with your publisher, Newman Springs, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing end of things for you?
Probably doing a podcast.
Well, I hope I make it easier for you.
You're trying.
And then it was finally a real thing. Your first copy came in. You're holding it in your hands, Melissa. What kind of a moment was that like for you?
Oh, it was very exciting, very fulfilling. I wasn't sure when I picked out the cover, if I picked out the right cover, but I felt it was when I saw it in my hands. It's been a lifelong desire to be a published writer, so it's a lifetime dream come true.
So looking ahead, do you see yourself doing this again, maybe writing and publishing more, do you think?
I hope so. I have a second book about Sam and George started called, Winter's Grip, which I started immediately after I finished this one, but it's been a while. It's been a huge rock of not getting work done to get through. But maybe now that I'm published, it'll be easier to go back and go, okay, I believe in myself now. Hard to believe in yourself when you're a first-time writer.
Well, what an important message in this book. Again, it's titled Open Windows. It's written by Melissa W. Sorgi, published by Newman Springs Publishing, and pretty much you can get it everywhere, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Melissa, thank you so much again for coming on the show and telling me all about open windows. It was really great talking with you.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
There's a new book we're going to be talking about right now, written by Dr. C.B. Howard and Dr. Brenda Howard. And one of the co-authors, Cedric, is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we're going to be talking all about it. Cedric, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Cedric, it's exciting. You have a new book out titled Wilt Thou Be Made Whole? Can you tell me all about this? What are readers going to find?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that they're going to find is really a journey between a son and his mother. And the journey talks about how we have used not just our faith, but also the knowledge and understanding of applying our faith to heal ourselves and to heal others around us. And that's really the premise behind the book and why we decided to jointly write the book. My mother's a long-term pastor of over 25 years, and I'm an educator for over 31 years. And so we took a developmental educational approach so that people actually have a journey, a guide to walk them through where they're at, to go through healing, delivering, and restoration in order to prepare them for their future without having to always operate through their wounds and the issues that they've had to deal with from the past.
Cedric, what kinds of readers did you have in mind for this?
Actually, to be quite honest, we wrote it for ourselves. And, my mother was a single mother who gave birth to me at a very young age. And I was her only child at the time, and I'm still, her only child. And so, she was operating through a wound at a very young age. And so for us, we wanted to acknowledge what we've gone through and then say, okay, how can we be made whole? Because it's only through the wholeness can we have a meaningful, positive life and fully embrace the promise that was given to us through our calling. And so we began planning the book during the pandemic, and we shared, her experience in working with, people in her church and the spiritual world and what I was dealing with in the education world, and realized that there was a lot of people that was hurting. And so we wanted to take time to capture that in a way that was not just speaking to, but we wanted to make sure to provide a guide to speak and heal with the person who's reading it.
So do you have experience in doing this, writing, publishing, or are you treading on some new ground here? So
my mother had written 2 other books previously in her career. And for me, in higher education as a vice president for 25 years and as a full faculty member at various institutions, I've had to write articles. And so this venture was our first venture together. And since that time, he's written another book and I've written a couple of books. But it was our first venture that we wrote together. Now, it took us a couple of years to ultimately take the manuscript and publish it. And so while we were working through the publication process, we began to work on other projects. So this is our first venture as a mother, son, as 2 people in ministry, as 2 professionals to try to educate those that were seeking information and ultimately needed a guide to get them through the healing process.
So once you started working with your publisher, Kristian Klepes, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing end of things for you?
I think the most challenging aspect for us was just curating our thoughts. Because when you have a manuscript, you kind of just want to throw everything in the kitchen sink into it, and you realize that not everything is relevant, or not everything is relevant for this particular project. And so for us, we had to curate our thoughts and really fine-tune the intent of what we were trying to accomplish. Because for us, as we're going through this, we were also healing ourselves and realizing that we were going through that bit of deliverance process ourselves. And so I think for us, the process determined the products that you produce. And so the process for us was a bit of working collaboratively with each other, seeing each other in different ways, because, we had saw each other as the parent-child relationship. And she knows who I am as a professional, and I know who she is. But we never saw each other as co-authors on a joint project. And I think that was another dynamic we had to discover and really renegotiate who we were as individuals trying to fulfill the project.
What an important book. Again, this is titled Wilt Thou Be Made Whole? It's written by the mother-son team of Dr. C.B. Howard and Dr. Brenda Howard. And it's published by Kristian Klepes Publishing. So find it at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Cedric, thanks again for coming on the show and telling me all about this great book. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It is truly an honor, and I'm very appreciative for the opportunity.
Sitting right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, I'm really happy to be talking with author Mollie P. Sawyer. Mollie, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me here tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Your new book is called A Kentucky Adventure. Mollie, I'm curious about this. What are readers going to be getting into here?
Okay, well, the story is about Romy the Raven. It's a children's story. And Romy has yet to go on any adventures. And one day he decides to be adventurous and take flight. And he takes the readers around a journey around Kentucky. And he teaches the readers about the state parks, the animals that live there, which in turn teaches the children about Kentucky state symbols like birds and trees and flowers. And he goes to about 7 parks around Kentucky, Corey, and just really encouraging the readers to embrace curiosity and bravery and exploration and just to be brave.
I love it. Mollie, how did this all come about? Where did you get the inspiration to start this?
Well, really the inspiration really was almost like a lightning bolt a little bit. Growing up, I always had a curiosity and an adventurous spirit, just going to the different state parks around Kentucky and learning about different things. But just in the last couple of years, I thought, wouldn't it be great if I took all of the things and stories that I learned at the state parks and kind of parlayed that into a children's story? And it just all kind of came together.
So when it comes to doing this kind of thing, writing, publishing, and all that, is this new to you, Mollie, or do you have some experience doing this?
Oh, no, this is very new to me. This is my very first book. I do not have a background, an atypical background for something like this. My background is in finance and being a COO and CFO, but being an avid reader and learner, I just finally put pen to paper and decided to do this. Got a lot of guidance from my local Carnegie Center, my local learning centers, and just finally did it.
So once you got started on this, the whole way up through the publishing and all of that, was this a long period of time altogether?
You know, really, the story came quickly. When I finally decided to do it and to really put it all together, it really went fairly fast. I probably put the story together over about a 2 or 3 month period, which meant I did my research, put all of that together. And then I had it out to publishing companies within, like I said, 3 or 4 months. And after that, 2 months later, I had a contract.
So once you started working with your publisher, Kristian Klepes, what would you say was the most challenging part of that publishing process for you?
Oh, gosh, the challenging part was, I'm a fish out of water. I didn't know anything about it. They were wonderful. They guided me through the whole process. But, it was like you had to take and you had to break the book down again, and you had to go line by line. But it was fun because I was able at that point to work with my illustrator. And we were then able to take the book, break it down scene by scene, really get into the deeper part of it and really do that next step of creative process. That was the best part of it.
I'm looking at it right now. The illustrations are beautiful. So it sounded like that was a pretty great process for you.
It was. I asked Kristian Klepes if I could hire my own illustrator, and they were wonderful. They said, of course, absolutely. Because I knew that this book, it had to be different. It could not be caricature. It needed to have organicness. It needed to have scenes. And I finally kind of came to it, and I'm like, I need watercolor. I had met this watercolorist. She's from Versailles, which is just another town over from me, a local Kentucky girl, and we hit it off. And she just brought the story to life.
So I could only imagine what was going through your head and what you were feeling whenever you're holding the first copy in your hands. It was finally a real thing, Mollie. What was that like?
Well, most people would say they were overjoyed. I definitely was overjoyed. I was overwhelmed. I had a deep sense of accomplishment. Seeing it in writing, knowing that story will live on forever. Not a lot of people have gone through that.
Well, this book is chock full of great messages, as well as the beauty of the great state of Kentucky. Again, it's titled A Kentucky Adventure. It's written by Mollie P. Sawyer, published by Kristian Klepes Publishing, and available pretty much everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Mollie, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight and learning all about a Kentucky adventure. Thanks again for being here.
Corey, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
The book I'm holding right now is a riveting spiritual fantasy exploring the rise of St. Michael the Archangel. It's written by Tyler James, and it's titled The Blue Flamed Angel. Tyler is joining me right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. We're going to be talking all about it. Tyler, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Tyler, what are readers going to find whenever they open up The Blue Flamed Angel?
Well, they are going to find a very humorous and spiritual journey told by St. Michael the Archangel through his experiences and through his story and how he tells it and how he remembers things.
So what kinds of readers did you have in mind for this?
I originally created this more for entertainment for the Christian readership. However, it's also built for the non-believers as I incorporate elements of scientific analysis with biblical truth. And I've kind of merged them together to try to bring the non-believers closer to God.
It's an interesting concept. How did this come about? What inspired you to start this?
What inspired me to start this was I saw, even in myself, I was a Catholic and then I fell away from the church. And then I recently got back with the church. And I noticed that sin in general takes a hold of people. And I myself needing a kind of a warrior image and warrior strength to combat sin. So that's when I decided, hey, why not better than to adopt St. Michael the Archangel? And more than that, I just felt the need to write about him, which originally started as a film script. And then that became the basis for the book, the outline, if you will.
So is this the first time you've done something like this, or do you have some experience doing it?
No, it's my first ever publication. I realized it needed to be written, and I just kept at it, and here we are.
So once you sat down, got started on it, was this a long process overall, the writing, publishing process and everything?
Yes, it was. It originally took me about 2 years to create this because I also had a break in between, sort of a writer's block, if you will, even though I had the outline. But it also took, I want to say, about 9 to 10 months-ish as far as the process. And it got published in November 2024, and we've been rocking and rolling ever since.
You mentioned writer's block. That can be so frustrating. So did you have a strategy to kind of get through those hurdles?
Yes. Basically, in my non-Catholic days, because even while writing this, I also fell away while writing this. In my non-Catholic days, I would be frustrated and I would be bogged down and I would just kind of try to brainstorm ideas, which really wasn't working out. But then when I reconnected with my Catholic faith and I noticed when I prayed more and I became more involved in the religion, and that's when the ideas started flowing again. And I actually credit that to St. Michael the Archangel, is that maybe he wanted me to be there and whatnot, and to write this book about him. That's who I credit it to.
So once you had your manuscript down, you started working with your publisher, Kristian Faith. Tyler, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing process for you?
Basically, the waiting. It was because I was so excited and everything getting done. And I know it's part of the normal process. They put their heart and soul into editing the manuscript, being professional with grammar and everything. But honestly, it was the waiting, and that was the toughest part. But as far as the publishing company goes, very professional. They kept me informed every step of the way. They're a very good company. They really are.
So then it was finally a real thing. Your first copy came in. You're holding it in your hands for the first time, Tyler. What was that moment like for you?
Oh, goodness. I guess. Wow. It was such a relief. That felt like mission accomplished. And it was just such a relief to hold it and saying, this is something that myself, or maybe even St. Michael the Archangel, through me, wrote. And I just held it and I was like, this is it. This is awesome. Now I can hopefully begin charity work through that and whatnot.
Again, this book is titled The Blue Flamed Angel. It's written by Tyler James and it's published by Kristian Faith Publishing. So head over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick-and-mortar stores and you'll be able to pick it up. Tyler, thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about The Blue Flamed Angel. It was great talking with you tonight.
Thank you. It was great talking to you too. And everybody, have a good day.
I'm looking at a book right now written by Rebecca J. Deaux that follows a young girl who's reminded by her grandmother of God's promise to never leave his children. The book is titled, I Know You'll Never Leave Me. And I'm really happy that Rebecca is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. We get to talk all about the book. Rebecca, welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Corey. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
It's great to be talking with you, and I can't wait to find out more about I Know You'll Never Leave Me. So, Rebecca, what are readers going to be getting into here?
Well, it's just a story of a grandmother and granddaughter, conversations that we used to have. My granddaughter, when she was a little girl, she used to say, Grandmother, I'm going to have to leave you now. And I would tease her, and I'd say, No, Callie, you're never going to leave me. And she'd say, Yes, I have to go. And so it kind of got into a banner. And every time I would see her, I'd say, You're never going to leave me. And so the Lord woke me up with this book in the middle of the night, and I just got up and wrote it. And it was so appropriate for this little girl.
So would you say this is a book then for children?
It's for children. It's for adults as well. I mean, it's got a storyline to it.
So have you ever done anything like this before, the writing and publishing thing, or is this kind of all new for you?
This is all new. I've never written anything before and just was really inspired to write this. And I sat on it for a couple of years, and then I heard that Covenant Books would be looking at some books. And so I just on a whim sent it in, and they called and said they'd love to publish it. So that's where it started.
So once you started writing it, clear up through the publishing process and everything, was this a long journey for you overall?
About a year. It didn't take that long. It was, mainly just getting it through Covenant Books and pictures and all that sort of thing.
Once you started working with Covenant, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing end of things?
Probably deciding pictures and such. They really are good with trying to get you to tell them what colors do you like and what pictures. So you basically design it, but it takes a minute, just especially if you haven't done it before, just figuring out exactly what you really want.
It must have been a really special moment whenever that first copy came in. It was finally a real thing. You're holding it in your hands, Rebecca. What was that like for you?
It was so exciting because, I hadn't written anything before, and I was thinking it would be a great thing. I have 12 grandchildren, and so it would be a good thing for them to remember and pick up in later years and just remember all the good stories that we've had over the year talking about the Lord.
So now you're officially a published author. What's the most rewarding aspect of this all for you?
Well, I think the most rewarding is just seeing my family excited about it. They've really jumped on it and, told all their friends, and they've been excited about it, and they've been excited for the grandkids too. So I think that's been the most rewarding.
So do you see yourself doing this again? Do you think you got some more books in you?
Oh, absolutely. I've got another one that's in publishing right now. It's being illustrated. It's a follow-up to this book.
Well, we have a lot of people listening to us right now who are just starting out in this whole thing like you. So do you have maybe some advice that you could offer to them?
I think just take it slow, and just really, kind of envision what you want the book to be. And, don't rush it. It'll get there. If there's any editing or anything, then these publishers allow you a lot of leeway. So just take your time so that you'll be happy with the final product.
And writing, it can be so fun and so much joy, but sometimes it's difficult. You get some challenges like writer's block, things like that. So are those things you had to go through?
No, not really. Like I said, this book was really inspired. So I didn't have to make many changes to it. It was just how I felt like it should be written to start out with, and the second one as well.
Well, what an important book. I think so many lives are going to be touched by this. Again, the title is I Know You'll Never Leave Me. It's written by Rebecca J. Deaux and published by Covenant Books. So find it at places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Rebecca, it's been wonderful talking with you tonight and learning all about your work. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Corey. I certainly appreciate you taking the time to interview me.
I'm holding a book right now. It's a compelling exploration of spiritual assurance and the presence of Christ within believers. It's written by Kristian Klepes, and it's titled, Is Jesus Christ Really in My Heart? And Kristian is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Kristian, welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Corey. Thank you for having me. And I'd like to say hello to all the ReaderHouse subscribers out there.
Well, Kristian, it's great to have you on the show, and I'm curious about, is Jesus Christ really in my heart? So what are readers going to be getting into here?
Yeah, so what you can expect is a combination of theology and practicality. So it looks at the theological context and practical context of what it means to invite Jesus Christ into your heart. And I can give just a list of some of the main points that the book makes. So Paul says that the test to determine whether someone is or isn't a Christian is whether Jesus Christ lives in them. And why is that the test? Well, Jesus says that if you choose to love me as your Lord and Savior, the Holy Spirit will live in you and make it possible for my presence to be in you. And Jesus said at least 3 times that if my presence abides in you, you will have life. But if my presence does not abide in you, you will not have life. And we actually see from the examples of how Christ prayed when he was on earth and how Paul prayed, they both prayed for Christ to dwell in our hearts. So what we can see from these points and other points that I make in my book is just how important it is for non-Christians who are considering whether to accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior, and Christians on their walk with Christ to accept Jesus Christ's presence into their heart by the Holy Spirit for salvation, and then to come into an active awareness of his presence for salvation and sanctification.
Well, that's great. So this is a book then for believers and non-believers alike.
Yes. So I tried to maintain that balance. That's what I said at the start. I think towards the end, it became more for believers and secondarily for non-believers. Like believers could use it as like a Bible study or maybe a devotional for like groups or individual. But I do believe that it has very valuable context and insights for non-believers as well.
So Kristian, how did this all come about? What inspired you to get started on it?
Well, I would say instead of what, I would say who. And that would be my beautiful wife, Liz, inspired me to set out on this author journey. You see, at the time, I was in Northeastern Seminary at Roberts University, and we prayerfully decided that it was best for me to start working as a lawyer again, to provide for our family. We were engaged. We were going to get married. We've been married 1.5 years now. And I found a great law firm to work at, Philip Home Offices. But I still wanted to do something with my passion for the Bible. And she said, well, if you're so passionate about it, then you should try writing a book about the Bible and about Jesus. I think you can do it. And so does my dad. And so she really supported me every step along the way. And like a lot of things, she was right because the book got published.
I love it. Is this the first time you're doing something like this, or do you have some experience in it?
Yes and no. So this is the first time that I published a book, but it's not my first published work. The book is actually based on my peer-reviewed article in the Canadian American Theological Review, which is called The Paraclete, Christ's Replacement or Christ Connector. Paraclete is just a Greek term for a title of the Holy Spirit. And that article just introduces new scholarly evidence that the Holy Spirit brings Christ's presence into our hearts rather than replacing him. With the book, I figured, like I made an article about this in the context of John 14 through John 16. I want to see if the same principle holds true throughout, the rest of the New Testament. So it's sort of like an expansion.
So there's the writing of the book, the publishing of the book. Was this a long journey for you overall?
Overall, it took about 1 year, maybe a little longer. I choose to factor in the time it took to work on the article. That took a long time. When it came to writing the book, by that time, I was so familiar with the topic that typing out the drafts for the manuscript, it felt like it took a short time. But even then, that took a few months.
Again, the title is Jesus Christ Really in My Heart? It's written by Kristian Klepes and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So head on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick and mortar stores. You'll be able to pick this up. Kristian, what a blessing it's been to be talking with you tonight and learning all about this book. Thanks again for being here with me.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me on here, Corey.
I'm looking at a book right now. It's a poignant collection of the author's reflections and thoughts concerning problems currently plaguing society. It's titled My Spoken Words. It's written by Jainet Crawford, and the author is right here with me now, and we're going to be talking all about it. Jainet, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that.
Can you tell me all about My Spoken Words and what readers are going to be finding here?
Okay, My Spoken Words came about. I'm a retired teacher, English teacher, and as such, I used to write pieces every day based on current events. Like I would read some headlines and then I would come back and I would write some pieces to read to my students about things and the way I see things. So everything is written through my lenses, my eyes, whatever was going on in our society, in our world. Because I taught high school English, my students were always fascinated by what was going on, but they didn't really understand everything that was going on. So what I tried to do is try to help them to see or understand what was going on in our society through my lenses, but giving each piece a narration and my own words to whatever it is, the current event, whatever was going on, if that makes any sense.
Definitely. So would you say this is a book then for young people?
It is for young people, but I think anyone can enjoy it. I think the younger audience, like middle school kids and even middle school kids can read it for themselves. They might have to have some explanation as to each piece. Elementary school kids, there are pieces in there that could be read to them and interpreted or so that they can understand what's going on. I just gave out a copy of my book at a request for someone to read, and I wanted to get her take on it, and she has not finished reading it. And so this was over the weekend, and so she said, oh my gosh, we have to sit down and we have to talk about this. And she said, what inspired you to write these pieces? And I was like, well, which one? So I could just go on and on because I'm so passionate about what I've written, and I believe so much in what I've written, you know, in my words, in my book. And I'm so happy that someone is reading and asking me questions because I've always wanted to just talk about it.
Now, Jainet, are you experienced in this whole writing and publishing thing, or is this all kind of new ground for you?
This is my first published work. Well, okay, let me go back up a little bit. I did write my dissertation because I have a doctorate degree in educational leadership, and I did do my writing of my dissertation, which is 100 and some odd pages. And so that's published. So about being a published author, that's a published piece that I have done, my dissertation, but this is the first book that I have published. And I really didn't start out to publish a book. I started out to just write pieces and read them to my students in my classroom. But one of the security guards came by one day, and as I was reading a piece to my students, and she was like, you need to write a book. This is great. And so it got me to thinking, and then I started writing more and more pieces that I would read to my students. But of course, the pieces that I would read to my students, I would make sure that they were appropriate for their age. I don't write anything that's outlandish anyway, but just things that they can understand and parents would approve of.
So once you decided to publish this, was this a long journey then for you overall, the writing, publishing, the whole process?
It was. I would say it took about a year to complete all of the pieces that I had written. Some of them were written before, but the more thought out pieces in my book did take the entire thing did take about a year for me to complete the entire journey of writing each piece and writing it the way I wanted it to sound and, be accepted or reviewed by or read by other people. It did take me about a year to complete the entire thing.
Well, it sounds like this book is going to connect with so many people. Again, it's titled My Spoken Words. It's written by Jainet Crawford, published by Covenant Books, and available basically everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also right down the street at your local bookshop. Well, Jainet, it's been wonderful talking with you tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
I appreciate you, Corey. Thank you for having me.
Joining me right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is author Brent Earl Aldom. Brent, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here with me today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Brent, you have a new book out titled Fresh Air, AIR. So can you tell me what readers are going to be finding here?
Yeah, basically this is a book that is trying to get a change in the world as far as the
everybody's been complaining about the negativity. And this is, I think, a book that's going to allow people to look in on themselves and allow them to make changes personally that will ultimately, if everybody were to do it, would ultimately change that negativity into a positive outlook on life.
What sorts of readers do you think this would connect with the most?
I actually targeted it, I think, for people anywhere from teenagers to, people later in life who are, maybe just pre-retirement. Everybody, change is difficult, so everybody's going to, have some different looks on it. But I think what it can do is it can help guide the future of the young and maybe allow for change in people who think maybe change isn't possible later in life.
So how did this come about, Brent? How were you inspired to start this book?
Well, the book itself, writing a book was just a promise that I had made a long time ago. And the book is actually kind of, dedicated to my grandfather, who was my hero growing up. And I had promised him that I would do something like this. And then as years went by, I made a similar promise to my wife and kids. And when I started seeing how the world was kind of changing in a not positive way, I decided I was going to finally get that message out and see if we can possibly do something about it.
So this is your first book then?
Yes, it is. And there's hopefully a few more to come.
So being that this is all kind of new for you, was this a long process altogether, the writing part, the publishing part, everything?
Yeah, it ended up taking about 5 years from the point when I started it. Some of that was self-inflicted. And I go over that in the book, is some of that was self-inflicted procrastination, really. There's no better way to put it. But the idea wasn't difficult as far as developing it. It was just being able to sit down and actually do the work. Of course, it was time when I had my kids were still living, with us, my wife and I. And so it's a little tougher when you have kids to try and sit down and get some quiet time. But overall, I actually do take ownership and say it's my fault. It took 5 years. It probably should have taken 1 year at most.
So once you had that manuscript ready and you began working with your publisher, Covenant Books, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing end of things?
Giving them the time to do their work. Obviously, everybody wants it done today, and you have to realize that this is a process and this is something that takes some time. And really, if you rush through it, maybe it doesn't come out in the way you had imagined in the first place anyway. So I think it's just not having the control over the time. That was probably the most challenging.
I could only imagine what you were thinking whenever you were holding the first copy in your hands finally, and it was actually a real thing. What was that like, Brent?
When the book arrived on my doorstep and I opened it up, my wife and kids were actually there. It was humbling. That's the best word I could say, was humbling. It was a promise made, a promise kept. And it was something that, to be honest, I'm not sure I believed would ever happen, even though I had made that promise. And once it hit, again, it was very humbling to be with my family and say, I did it.
Well, you said this is something you've always wanted to do, and finally, here, it's out for the world. So when you think about that, Brent, what's the most rewarding aspect of this all for you?
Well, it's funny, having the ability to say that you did this, and then knowing that the people that were there along the way have gone out and supported you, and they tell people about it and they promote it. And then they, of course, the friends and family buy it and they get their friends and family to buy it. It's kind of neat that way to see how it spreads at a grassroots level. And then, who knows where it'll go from there.
Well, this book definitely sounds like a breath of fresh air. In fact, it's titled Fresh Air, AIR. It's written by Brent, Earl, Aldom, published by Covenant Books. Find it at places like Amazon, and Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Brent, thank you so much again for coming on the show and telling me all about your work. It was really nice talking with you.
Yeah, and thanks for having me. I just hope that everybody will eventually get to breathe some fresh air.
The new book by Linda Castro Martinez depicts the challenges the Chavez Arvizu family faced in the mining town of Picacho. It's titled Antonia Chavez Arvizu, Memoir of a California Gold Mining Family. And I'm really happy we're going to be talking all about this book. The author, Linda, is right here with me. Linda, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Linda, can you tell me what readers are going to find when they get into this book?
Well, my book is about an American pioneer family who settled in California and Arizona. It's the story of my immigrant ancestors who came to the United States seeking a better way of life in the late 1800s. My Chavez ancestors were from Chihuahua, Mexico. They came to see what they could achieve, not to see what they could receive. And the story is told through the eyes of my great-grandmother, who is a gold miner's wife and the mother of 7 children who were born in the mining camps. The Chavez family is interesting with respect to that they're the family of Cesar Chavez. He was famous during the 1960s, 1970s. He was a civil rights leader and founder of the United Farm Workers. Anyway, the Chavez family came from Chihuahua up north to Texas, crossed New Mexico, crossed Arizona, and finally settled in the mining town of Picacho, California. Now, Picacho epitomized the wild, wild west. There were saloon gunfights, there was thefts, lynchings, gambling, women of ill repute, and men who died from horrible mining accidents. The town really some people displayed their worst human characteristics as being miners in that town. But my grandmother, she describes her challenges, struggles, and joys of raising and caring for her family because it was a very desolate and harsh environment. If you know about Yuma, Arizona, and how arid and, harsh the environment is, well, Picacho's only like 30 miles north of Yuma, Arizona. And so they lived under very austere and trying circumstances. The one saving grace was that Picacho was west of the Colorado River and Yuma was, east of the Colorado River. But my grandmother tried to preserve her family life there. She was a woman of strong Catholic faith. She was a powerful driving force in making sure that her family was safe and nurtured and loved. And, that's what makes a strong and functional society. If you have a strong family, you're going to have a strong society. And that's what I try to come across in my book.
Oh, what a wonderful story, Linda. What kinds of readers do you think this would connect with the most?
Well, I wrote it so all Americans could read it. I would like all Americans to read it and find out more about Americans of Mexican ancestry, because we really have been here since the inception of the United States. And through our hard work, we have helped the United States become a prosperous industrial and economic nation. And I don't think most Americans know that because there's a lot of attention given to illegal Mexican immigrants. But we're not all illegal. As I said, on the West Coast, we founded the great cities of San Diego, Monterey, San Francisco, San Jose, Santa Barbara, and we're not given much credit for that. While America was developing on the East Coast, 13 colonies fighting the British, our Spanish ancestors were over here settling and protecting California from the British and the Russians. So we have a vital footprint in our American history on the West Coast, in the Southwest.
Absolutely. So how'd this come about, Linda? What gave you the idea to write this?
I grew up with my mom, my grandma, telling us stories about Picacho, California, and how our ancestors lived there. And they also told me about another branch of my family, which is the Castros. If you know anything about California, you've heard of Castro Valley, Castroville, Castro District. Those were all places that my Castro ancestors helped found and develop. So I thought, America should hear these stories. It's another aspect of American life, and the more we learn about each other, I think the better America will be.
Again, it's titled Antonia Chavez Arvizu, Memoir of a California Gold Mining Family. This is written by Linda Castro Martinez and is published by Covenant Books, so you can find it pretty much everywhere, places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Linda, it's been great talking with you tonight and learning all about this book. Thanks so much again.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. I appreciate it, and it was fun.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.